Hi, my name is Jamin Gurker. I'm a realtor in South Central Alaska, and my mission is to help people build intentional, significant legacies for themselves and their families by coaching them in real estate. In order to accomplish that goal, I strive to make sure that I keep everybody informed about what is going on in the real estate market beyond just the blanket statement of it's good or things are moving fast. In order to do that, I'm doing a deep dive every week into a different market of the local area here. This week, we're looking into the Mat-Su Valley overall for the past month compared to the same time last year. So that's going to be beginning of August up to the beginning of September, the current time. Those two slices of time compared to each other from year to year. Before we get started though, make sure that you do give this video a like, and if you want to make sure that you stay up to date on what is going on in the local markets, make sure that you subscribe and you hit the little bell just to make sure that you receive all the notifications when I do make a new video that's going to be relevant content such as this. Now without further ado, let's jump into it. Now, the first big thing that we really want to look at when we're analyzing how the market is doing is the total number of overall listings that are on the market. This is going to be significant because obviously if you have more inventory, it's going to be more of a buyer's market just because they do have a lot more options. Just looking at the month slice that we're looking at from about beginning of August last month to the beginning of September now in 2020, what we're seeing is we're actually seeing a significant drop in the amount of overall inventory that's available. You see, this time last year, the total on the market was about 1,315 homes. The same time this year is 1,074. So that's pretty significant. That's actually an 18% drop in the total number of properties that were on the market from this time period this year to last year's time period. So that's pretty significant. Big part of that is probably a lot of people are just waiting to see what's going to happen instead of taking advantage of the opportunities that are out there. So that's the total number of active listings that are on the market. Now let's take a look at the number of properties that are in fact under contract or went under contract during that time period, just to see if things are moving. And what we're seeing is, yes, we are actually seeing quite a few homes that are going under contract pretty quickly here compared to, again, the time period from the beginning of September this year, or I'm sorry, the beginning of August up to about September this time this year compared to the same time period last year. Last year, it was 290 homes went under contract during that time period. This year, it's 406. So that's fairly significant, and that's a pretty healthy, indication of what we're seeing about the market. Now, it's going to make more sense for me to actually show you this next chart right after the under contract chart. So this is going to be called the pending ratio. Now, we obviously know the total number of properties that are on the market. We know a fair number of them have gone under contract. Now let's take a look at the percentage of the overall number of homes that are on the market that are pending. It took a significant jump because last year, let's look at all these homes over here. Last year you had about 37% of all these homes were pending. Well, this year, about 57% of the total homes are on the market. So what that means is even though there's roughly rounding up 1,100 homes, less than half of them are actually available for you to buy because they're under contract already. So again, that's just a really good indication that properties are selling quickly and the inventory is low and the demand is going to be high. If the demand wasn't high, you obviously wouldn't see this significant of an increase. Okay, so that's going to be the pending ratio. Pretty interesting metric to keep an eye on. For some price ranges I've seen recently, roughly about 75% of the overall inventory in that price range is pending. So you definitely need to keep an eye on that. It's going to give you a better indicator of what the demand is for your price range. Okay, let's take a look at the new listings that are coming on the market. This is very significant, and I'm going to explain more later on here, but it is significant because the concern going into this was that we were going to have a couple months during the pandemic where a lot of stuff came off the market and then not a whole lot going, and then we'd have a huge surge of inventory all of a sudden to kind of make up for it, and that would create more of a buyer's market and could really drive prices down and create a lot of other issues. But really what we're seeing is that by and large, the number of new listings coming onto the market was not very significant up to this point. I noticed this during last week's video talking about Anchorage, but we're starting to see an increase in the number of new listings coming onto the market compared to the same time period last year. Now, this isn't huge, just the graph here makes it look a lot bigger than it actually is because it's starting at 350 and instead of 0, so it's going to seem really large. But still, with that being the case, I mean, we actually are seeing about a 13% increase in the number of new listings coming onto the market here. So that is something we want to keep an eye on. If there's going to be a kind of uptick in the inventory, that's something we do want to keep an eye on because it does start creating more of a buyer's market at that point. Obviously, you can still buy and sell homes in any market, but that's just something we want to be cognizant of moving forward. Has this been useful for you so far? If it has, you know what to do. Give this video a like. If you have a specific area that you'd like me to focus on within the Mat-Su Valley or really anywhere in South Central Alaska, feel free to drop that in the comments section down below and be happy to answer any questions that you have about that specific area. Now, without further ado, let's go and finish today's video. Now, how many homes have actually sold during this time period? Again, this kind of just emphasizes last year about 274. This year, significant jump to about 387 homes sold during the same time period. So a 41% jump in the number of overall homes that have sold. So that's pretty significant, and just as indicative again that the demand is going to be high for property right now, partly because of the interest rates, partly just because people are really wanting to go buy homes and take advantage of that. So that's good. Now let's take a look at the number of sold volume. I'm not always convinced this is really an important thing for us to look at, so I'll keep it brief. But obviously you can see this is the amount of inventory that we had sold last year. Sold volume, I should say, and this is the number this year just for residential. Just kind of reflects more of what we're talking about, where you're going to see a lot of homes getting sold during this time period, even though the inventory is down. So fascinating stuff. This is definitely an interesting market to be taken apart. Now, looking at the average sold price, it's gone down just a little bit by 1%. This looks like an enormous difference on this chart. I'm going to have to work with it a little bit so it's a little bit more reflective of reality. But it's gone down just a little bit in the Mat-Su Valley over the course of the past month, from the beginning of August up to the current time, compared to the same time period last year, from about 407,000 to about rounding down to 402,000. So not a big difference. I'm not always a fan of using the average sold price, just because there are so many other metrics that get play into it. But a lot of people are going to ask about that, so there you go. Now, one more thing we really want to look at is going to be the days on market. Now, this is important because if you have a lot of days on market, that means that obviously properties are sitting there for a while, and it means that people who are trying to sell their homes, that they're going to be more open to having to negotiate with buyers when they come in and start asking for more closing expenses, or maybe they want to come down on the price because the property is so old. Keep in mind, this is an overall average. Some houses are going to sit on there for 70, 80, 90, over 100. I've seen some for about a year sitting on the market. So this is obviously an average. It takes a lot to bring that average down, which is why it's so significant. While this year, it was 44 last year, this year, the same time period, it's actually down to 38 days overall average on the market. So that's going to be pretty significant. And like I said, the reason for that is going to be the demand remains high and inventory is low, and so properties are going to move a lot quicker. So yeah, that's again another healthy indicator. Means that if you're a buyer, you need to get in there, get something to work quickly, because the chances are the property is not going to be staying on the market for very long. And obviously if you're a seller, it's a great thing because your house is going to sell quicker, which usually means that you're going to get more money and not have to negotiate as much for closing expenses and other things. The sooner your property gets under contract, the better the negotiation phase of the process is for you, and that's really where you can make or lose thousands of dollars in a real estate transaction. All right, now let's summarize all of this then and finish out this report so it all makes sense. What we're seeing, the big things, is inventory remains low. That means that we can expect to continue to see a really healthy market going into the future here. It's when you get into a buyer's market where you have tons of inventory out there, that's when you start seeing troubles with the real estate market. Number two, the days on market remain low, which again, good, just means that there is a high amount of demand. Speaking of demand, we're seeing that compared to last year, there is way higher of a pending ratio than we had before, which is also good, also a strong indication. Even though we are seeing a lower inventory, the demand still remains pretty high. Big part of that has to do with the interest rates. The only thing on here that I am really looking at is going to be the number of new listings coming onto the market. As we mentioned before, we are seeing an increase in the number of listings, new listings, compared to this time last year. It's not necessarily a bad sign, but it could be a sign that we're starting to adjust and maybe not becoming a buyer's market, but becoming more of a balanced market again. So that's something I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on in the coming weeks and months as we continue to work through this. Everything else looks great. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It just is something that we want to keep an eye on. Thanks for watching. If this has been useful, you know what to do. Give this video a like, make sure that you subscribe, and if you have any questions you'd like to ask me personally, make sure that you send me a direct message through my Facebook page. I'll be putting that in the description down below, so you can go ahead and do that. I do my best to answer as many questions on the comment section as I can, but best way to get a hold of me is going to be through that link down below. So hope this was useful, and look forward to talking to you all next time.